It's been a while since I've done an update video on the single-family home market in Edmonton. It's been about a month since I've basically broken down and looked at it in a little bit more detail, including how much inventory we have for single-family homes, how fast homes are selling, what percentage of them are going over list, and how much over list. So that's what I'm going to be exploring in this video, so make sure to tune in so you can get the details. Okay, so jumping right into it, as you can see, we're going to look at how many active detached homes are on the market right now as of May 1st. How many homes are pending, how many sold throughout April, and this is going to include all the data that I have so far. Even though I'm now on May 1st, there's going to be a few sales that happen at the end of April that wouldn't have been reported yet. Sometimes it takes a few days for those to get reported, and it only typically happens during the business week. So these numbers will actually change a little bit in a few days, but this should give you a pretty good idea. Then we're going to look at how many homes sold at list price. So that means if a house was listed at $300,000, it sold at $300,000. How many of them sold over list? And the average percentage that they sold over list, which could be really useful for helping to figure out if you're competing on a property on average, how much over the list price do these properties actually go for. So we'll look at that. And then the average sold to list price percentage, that's just going to be looking at the market as a whole in April for detached homes. What does it work out to as an average percentage? So let's jump right into that here. But before we do that, just wanted to remind you to make sure you like this video if this type of content is useful for you. Helps me know that I'm doing a good job. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers. So if you could also subscribe, and you can help me get there. Okay, so as of May 1st, there was 1,829 active detached homes for sale in Edmonton. And this is actually one of the first things that stuck out to me because that's a big contrast from where we were sitting just a month or two ago. It wasn't too long ago at the beginning of February and even early March where I was saying that there was less than 1,000 homes for sale in Edmonton. So that's a pretty steep increase from, bouncing around 1,000, sometimes going a little bit under, sometimes being a little bit over, to now being at 1,829. So we've had a pretty big increase in inventory, which has helped to ease some of the pressure that home buyers are feeling if you're looking for a detached home. It's still definitely pretty hot out there, but it's not as crazy. There's a little bit more breathing room, still not a whole lot, but just having some extra inventory can help make it so there's maybe not quite as many multiple offers on each property. You might have a little bit more time to look at stuff, and also just more to choose from. Can help take some of the desperation out of the market for home buyers. Now, if we look at how many were pending, as of May 1st, we had 396 that were actually still pending when I looked at this on May 1st. Those are properties that are already under contract, and I don't consider them part of the active inventory because more than likely those sales are going to go through. Whereas if you're looking on sites like realtor.ca, the pending listings still show up as active for you. Realtors can go on the back end and we can see if it's actually pending. So if you went and looked on the MLS for detached homes, you'd find over 2,000 that are actually active. But I know that about 400 of those are already pending, so they're not really active on the market. Now, if we look at how many properties sold in April for detached homes, 1,071 sales. And that's still pretty strong, that's still pretty robust. But this is one of the other key takeaways that I noticed. So with just over 1,000 detached homes that sold, it's still a strong market, but that's actually looks like a reduction from what we had in March. By comparison, in March, there was actually 1,317 detached single-family homes that sold. I was expecting the sales volume to actually go up in April, especially since we had more inventory coming onto the market. You would expect that since there's more to choose from and if there's that demand there, that you would actually have more sales volume. But we essentially had the number of inventory, how many active homes that were available, go up, while sales volume actually dropped a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, that's still a very strong market. But that is a shift. So that was probably my second big takeaway. We've got more inventory, but our sales volume dropped a little bit, which can make you start to wonder if this is because of what's been going on with the interest rates. We've seen fixed interest rates go up pretty substantially over the last month. We had a rate hike from the Bank of Canada of 50 basis points recently, and they're also expecting another one that could be like that in June. So that does start to affect the sentiment in the market. It affects how much buyers can afford to purchase. And this is the key thing that I'm going to be watching over the next few months to see how our inventory levels adjust, as well as what our sales volume is. Okay, so if we look at how many of those properties sold at list price, there was 113 that sold at list price. And if we look at how many of those sold over list price, it's 487. Now, if we're looking at the average percent sold over list, so there was 487 that sold over list. How many of those were actually, how much over list essentially were they selling for? And that's where we get 103.96%. So almost 104% of list price when they sell over list. So that's still pretty close to what it was the last time I looked at it. You're looking at the average home that does sell over list going about 4% over list price. Now, if you look at all 1,071 of those homes, what percentage of their list price did they average out to? And it essentially averages out pretty close to 100%. We had really high absorption rate in the previous months, where essentially we were selling homes at the same around the same rate as what we were putting them on the market, and we had an absorption rate that was extremely high. And now our absorption rate is sitting at about 58%. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that's still a seller's market, and I would still consider that a seller's market, but when we had absorption rates of close to 100%, I think in some cases we were over 100% on the detached homes for a while. I'd have to go back and look, where that's an extremely hot and overheated market. Dropping down to 58%, although it's still a seller's market and it's not exactly going to make home values drop, it does represent a big shift in the market. So I'm going to be watching this very closely over the next month or two. It is a bit of a shock that we went from it being that hot and that low of inventory to all of a sudden having our sales volume drop a little bit while our inventory actually increased. So that shows that the market acceleration has definitely changed a lot. And I am seeing this sort of translate into the prices not going up as quickly as they were before. We had big price gains in February, and then March we also had some price gains as well. I'm not seeing as much of a price gain in April, so it does actually feel like the market is starting to flatten out a little bit. So I don't expect to see the prices accelerating as much. And that is basically just what happens when you have your inventory levels go up a little bit, and if your sales volume drops, it takes that intensity out of the market, and it's shifted it into, it's not a balanced market yet, it's still a seller's market, but if this continues, it could actually move into a balanced market for detached single-family homes. Now, obviously, it's possible that we just had a bit of a lull. I wouldn't really even call it a lull, but if you're just comparing the February and March sales volume to April, there is definitely a shift there, and it'll be really interesting to see kind of what happens as we go into May, because usually March, April, May, June are some of the biggest months of the year. I'm really curious to see if our numbers go back up or if they're going to continue to trend down a little bit on our sales volume. If that does happen, and if our inventory keeps going up, then we could actually potentially see the detached single-family home market shift into a bit more of a balanced market. And this is influenced by a lot of things. Like I said, there's the interest rates. That's probably one of the biggest things. There's a lot of news out there right now talking about other parts of Canada, and some people are saying the housing market's overheated and whatnot. I do think Edmonton's in a bit of a unique situation compared to Vancouver and Toronto, but we're not immune to changes in interest rates. And there's a lot of people out there that had good interest rate holds that they've taken advantage of, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens after those essentially run out, what kind of activity that we're going to see in the market. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to look at is average prices and average sold prices. Before we get into that, I just want to let you know that this can give you a good overall view of what's going on in the detached home market in Edmonton, but I can give you more specific advice depending on your situation and whether you're buying, selling, which area of the city that you're in, as well as what price point and type of home. And I'd recommend reaching out to me directly at 780-819-5508. You can either text me or call me, or you can email me at trevor@trevortardif.com, or go to booktrevornow.com, select a time on my calendar, and then I will call you. My consultations are completely free, so don't feel bad about reaching out to me, even if you're not sure if you're necessarily going to make a move right now. I can help guide you through that process to figure out what's the best option for you. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, so the average list price in April for detached homes was $517,080. The average sold price was $518,624. The median list price was $464,000. which is that midpoint of the market. So the average can be skewed by high-priced properties or low-priced properties, whereas the median, it's like if there was 100 homes sold, it's the 50th one or the 51st one, essentially the one right in the middle. So maybe if there's 101 homes sold, it would be number 51. Okay, and if the median sold price was $469,000. Now, if we compare that to April 2021, the average list price in April 2021 was $482,940. The average sold price was $475,934. I'm gonna skip the median list price just because I didn't write that one down. and the median sold price was $430,000. Now in April, the average days on market was 22, so that's moving pretty quick. And the median days on market was 14. And that still includes the days that it's pending. So if you have a property that, you know, hit the market and then it had a 2-week condition period and it got an offer the first day on the market, you could end up with a number of sold days on market of 14. So that's pretty fast considering it counts the pending days too. Now if we look at some changes here, the gain between the average sold price in April 2022 from April 2021, you're looking at, that's $48,659. So still pretty close to what we had when we looked at the gain of March compared to March 2021. And then the median price gain, it's also around the same, 47,500. So we're looking at an increase of 10.35%. If you're looking at the average, and if you're looking at the median, you're looking at an increase of 11.27%. That's a pretty decent increase from last year still. So even though the market's lost a little bit of steam, it's still a seller's market, so it's still definitely hot out there. Prices are still up. They do look like they might be up a little bit from March. I don't have those numbers right in front of me. We'll have the full stats coming out in the next few days, and then I'll make a video on that. And that won't just be looking at the single family home market, but this should give you a pretty good idea on kind of how the market's shifted. We're still seeing a lot of the properties going over list price. It's still about the same percentage of them as before. The percentage of homes selling over list price is at 45.5%, so it's about half of them do. And the ones that, if you include the ones that sold at list price or higher, you're at 56%. So it's definitely still a seller's market. It's just not quite as intense, so it's not causing the prices to accelerate quite as much. But it's a pretty big shift I'm noticing. Just, you know, like I've said this several times, but the inventory going up a little bit and the sales volume dropping a little bit, that does start to shift the market. So we'll see what happens here in May. I'm going to be keeping a closer eye on it this month. I hope this was useful for you guys. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you want to watch more videos like this, you can check out this playlist over here for other market updates. And if you click over here, you can subscribe. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you on the next video.